Story 1. Isolation to deal with emotion or hurt. Relationship with food. Binging. Overprotective about food. Quick to react. Lack of coping mechanisms. High anxiety with certain situations. Story 2. They are bedroom kids, not living room kids. Also known as they tried to hide or avoid interactions when they were home by sneaking in and out of their rooms and being as quiet as possible. If they were visible, they were targeted. Story 3. Being a people pleaser and always trying to keep the peace. Being hyper-independent. Always thinking they did something wrong when someone is off with them. Story 4. They eat everything off their plate even if they are full. They are minimalist because they grew up with hoarders. Even if they are in good financial standing, they penny pinch on needs. Story 5. They will never display vulnerability, so they cannot form close emotional ties unless they can learn to trust enough to find a soft place to land. I know because I'm nearly 70 and still single because I cling to the belief that the only person I can ever rely on is myself. Story 6. For me, if they get really defensive, they probably grew up being criticized for everything they did or berated for being themselves. They learned to rely on themselves to be an advocate because nobody ever defended them. They feel a need to over-defend themselves from a childhood of being kicked down without anybody there to pick them up. Story 7. I used to keep $100 in cash in my wallet in case I needed to run away again. Inflation has messed with the numbers, but it used to mean 3 nights in a hostel and at least 3 hot meals. Story 8. Feel like a burden all the time, especially when receiving gifts. My boyfriend's reaction would always be like, "Please don't spend your money on me." He's getting better though. I try my best to make him feel like he deserves good things. Story 9. Always apologizing. My cousin is in her 40s and still does it every other sentence. All of her siblings have cut off her parents. For me, it's dissociating when my wife needs me emotionally. I'm getting better at it, but dissociating is an automatic response to stress for me. I grew up in a very emotionally unstable household. Story 10. If you basically have to pry innocuous information out of them during casual conversations, I learned at a very young age to answer only what was directly asked of me and never volunteer information, because it will be used against you later. Story 11. They go through their life without attracting any attention, not overly sharing with others when they can control it. They live a controlled lifestyle that is not affected by others whenever possible. They don't trust anyone, or maybe only a few who have proven their loyalty. If you don't stand out, you don't get noticed, you don't get opinions, you don't get judged, and you don't get hurt. Story 12. Jesus H. Christ, I'm not clueless about how rough childhood was, but there aren't a lot of boxes unchecked. Any kids reading this, it will get better. It's going to feel like a prison sentence. You're going to want to quit, self-harm, and self-medicate the pain away, and maybe eventually just to feel anything. Resist. Don't let them win. Get as physically strong as you can. Stick to routines no matter how difficult. Don't beat yourself up when you fail. Sleep in the same pattern as much as you can, whether it's 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. or 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., whatever you can manage. If food is a problem, do what you can to stay away from cheap, unhealthy food. It destroys you quietly and makes everything harder. You can. There are good people in the world, it's important to know that. Make conscious, thoughtful decisions that give you an opportunity to win. The more you learn, the more freedom you'll have. Never stop punching. Story 13. A person is struggling with trust and emotional closeness. They may have difficulty forming healthy relationships, or might seem distant or defensive. They could also have intense reactions to situations that trigger past trauma. Often, they might avoid talking about their past or seem uncomfortable with vulnerability. Story 14. Unhealed. Feels like walking on eggshells when around them. Extremely invested to the point that they get bothered by people who have no bearing in their lives. Easily offended. Hides due to shame. Keeps up facades. Healed. Empathetic. Wise beyond their years. Trusts only a few people. Does not like attention. Resilient. Story 15. Low self-esteem, not talking about their home life or family in much detail, and not taking their own mental health seriously or bottling things up and being unable to ask for help because they've been constantly belittled or hurt worse when they tried to open up about issues. Story 16. On a related note, they did a magnetic resonance imaging scan on both children who have suffered trauma and veterans. They found that the hippocampal volume is affected. The area is responsible for learning and memory, survival, feeding, fighting, and sexual behavior. The good news is that it is reversible. Story 17. There are many reactions to trauma. It depends on various factors, including the type, duration, and severity. Some individuals become vulnerable narcissists, while others develop borderline personality traits. One study determined that 80% of prison inmates suffered from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people don't show obvious symptoms until late middle age. Story 18. Hiding from the world in their house because people in their life made them feel ugly and not good enough for the world to see. Hypersexuality, calm in the storm, does not cry in front of anyone, always saying sorry, flinching when you raise hands or anything around them. The list goes on. Story 19. Living out of a bag in case you need to get out fast. Withdrawing into things like television, computers, and hobbies for hours to escape from the world. Story 20. They have no opinion on anything, none. You ask them about what they think on something, and they shut down because they were trained not to be disrespectful or upset the family by basically punishing them for expressing their opinion on something that the toxic family sees as an attack and disrespect towards them. So now they simply never formulate an opinion on anything. They're just neutral on every topic. Story 21. No long-term goals or plans. I just learned the term for this is foreshortened future, and it's a symptom of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I did not plan to survive past 25, and now I'm just winging it. Story 22. Never wanting to put themselves first, even in the simplest situations in day-to-day life. The feeling that they don't deserve anything good and the constant urge to hide themselves due to extremely low self-esteem. Unable to start a conversation or make friends without constantly feeling like a burden. Above all, they are exceptionally good at hiding emotions and holding it all in. Been there, felt that. Story 23. Hiding and compulsively lying about completely simple things like going for a snack in the kitchen or the reason you borrowed a screwdriver. People who walk incredibly silently and deliberately so, waiting to greet someone they live with until they hear their footsteps and how they close the door to gauge their mood. Being an overachiever and completely ignoring self-care. Waking up before everyone else and going to bed super early just to avoid family time. Personally used to hide in closets if I heard my stepdad wake up early. Listening for the toilet flush and creaking steps. Story 24. Acting out at school because of being neglected at home. Seeking love from other adults, not romantically as a child, wanting their friends' parents to like them, which can turn into seeking relationships with those double their age as an adult. Borderline personality disorder stems from childhood trauma. Accepts abuse or is abusive. Says sorry for every little thing, even when they had no impact on it. Part of borderline personality disorder is not letting people get close to you because you fear they will leave you or treat you the same as your parents. Memory loss gaps. Story 25. Hypervigilance in groups of people. Split attention, hyperactive, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Conflict or challenge avoidance via numbing, addiction. Gabor Mate put it better than I can. He has many great talks on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and trauma. Story 26. It might just be my people, but their type of sense of humor is a big indicator. Comedic timing and dark humor have always been traits I have found in my traumatized friends. Story 27. Ha ha ha. Speaking from experience. 1. Immediately detecting shifts in mood or how something is said. Thinking everything is contractual. If you do something for me, I have to do something for you. Isolation. You can't be hurt if you're alone. Thinking everyone has an ulterior motive. Lack of trust in anything or anyone. Privacy concerns because you never had any. Inability to enjoy something or hobbies. Questioning every interaction, no matter how it actually ended. Did I say something wrong? 0 self-esteem. 10. Feelings of absolute worthlessness. 11. Perfectionism. 12. Body image issues. 13. Lack of social capability. I'd rather be in the corner than interact. 14. Substance abuse. 15. Talking too fast or not at all, shutting people out. Story 28. Developing a personality disorder, becoming abusive, becoming a career criminal. Being overly reactive, for example, prone to violence, impulsive behaviors, explosive rage. Lacking empathy for others because they have never had it shown to them. Story 29. In my experience with women, it's being a caretaker. It's a survival mechanism, either to avoid being hurt or because your parents are addicts and you're the one who has to get the kids dressed and fed for school. Story 30. Extreme empathy. I am not talking about empaths and their crystals. I am talking about people who start panicking when they sense that someone else in the room is stressed out or frustrated. They are used to being the punching bag for frustrations that have nothing to do with them. Story 31. They are hypersensitive to normal things. You could say anything or do anything, and they will misinterpret it as if it was meant to hurt them. They are also insecure about most things. Story 32. Being really averse to food waste. My friends complain because I ask them to take their food home if there's stuff left on the plate. I've eaten food well past the best-by date because I can't stand wasting food. Story 33. I flinch at every loud noise, even my husband doing the dishes or shutting a cabinet a little too loudly for my liking. I feel most comfortable in my closet when I'm scared or stressed out. I suffered with a tiny bit of postpartum anxiety after my fourth child when my mom stayed with us to help. First time she was there after her birth. She did things like tell my husband he was spoiling me after staying with me in the hospital after I gave birth. I got to a point where someone ringing the doorbell would make me want to hide in the closet before I realized she had to go, and then I was fine. I also tell myself, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, in a particular way. I one time heard my little sister in the shower saying the same words in the way that I say them to myself. Is that how I consoled her when we were little? The world may never know because I barely remember any of my childhood, but I never forget anything as an adult. I volunteered with a fellow classroom mom in August, didn't see her again until December, and still remembered to ask how her anniversary trip went. I really never forget anything as an adult. Story 34. Struggling with physical journaling because of the fear that someone will find it and use the contents against you. Not being able to stop overeating when there is free food or alcohol. Story 35. Both my wife and I have childhood trauma. Hers is about neglect and mine was through loneliness. For her, compulsive lying has been a problem. For both of us, our relationship with food has been challenging. I have obsessive-compulsive disorder and have blanked out most of my childhood memories. My wife is a bit of a hoarder. She went without anything, so we aren't throwing anything away. Story 36. They feel they need to do things to be deserving of love, as in love was conditional for them growing up, never unconditional. The need to take care of everyone else while denying their own needs, due to taking on adult responsibilities as a child. They have large gaps in their memories concerning their childhood. Hypervigilance and the ability to read the room extremely well, due to always walking on eggshells as a child. Enduring emotionally or physically abusive relationships due to a lack of self-esteem and the fact that it is all the person has really known. Lack of basic skills due to negligence. Hoarding food in their bedrooms. And, of course, trauma responses and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a mix of things I experienced in my childhood and things I have observed in clients. I'm not going to differentiate between personal experience and observations, but I have been working through them for years in therapy with a trauma therapist, and I'm doing so much better now. Story 37. I have never in 46 years posted anything on the internet. All of you are me, and I am so sorry for that. I see myself in every one of you, and I just wanted to say thank you for sharing. You have made me, as of today, feel less crazy and a little more normal. I wish the feeling wasn't normal, but I feel less alone. Love to you all and hoping we all get through as best we can. Story 38. Self-isolating, not wanting to be the center of attention, wanting to keep big news to themselves, even if it's happy news. A vicious, jealous protection of privacy derived from early self-preservation instincts. Story 39. Food hoarding. Once you have been food insecure, it becomes second nature to store away as much food as you can, even in times when food and money are plentiful. Story 40. People ask me how I can keep doing my job. I am a behavior technician and quite literally get beat up by elementary students sometimes. They do not understand my lack of emotion, and anger at getting beat up comes from years of physical and emotional abuse, and think I am making a sick joke when I tell them it is my trauma response. Story 41. My wife is a teacher in the 4th grade. A few weeks ago, she had a student come to class who is normally a typical 4th grader. Talkative, laughing, being a kid. That day, he was very quiet and very secluded. She began talking to him and noticed he had massive welts, scratches, and marks across his arm and would flinch if she came close. Naturally, she had to report this and notify the Department of Human Resources, known as Child Protective Services in other states. It was then that the child started crying, begging her not to call them because he didn't want his mom to get in trouble again. I think it's safe to say if a 4th grader knows what the Department of Human Resources is and what it stands for, that's a tough childhood. Story 42. I have an extreme fear of abandonment. My mother left my siblings and me when I was 5 years old. She took us to her grandmother's house and said she'd be back tomorrow. I didn't see her again for 7 years. My father was in prison my entire childhood. Growing up, I would scare off girlfriends with my clinginess. I'm a father of 3 now with a loving wife. Every time I do something good as a parent, I pat myself on the back. I was never taught these things,